All right, Solomon's coming in. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. Solomon.
How are you going, Dylan?
How you doing?
Can you hear me? Good, thank
Yeah,
you.
I can. I can hear you. I
Okay.
just was trying to disconnect from my Bluetooth speakers because I don't need any interruptions that way.
Awesome, we don't mind. Listen to your playlist.
Yeah, throw a playlist on while we're talking. I'm going to give people a second to come in.
Yeah, absolutely.
For the people that have just joined, stick around to the end if you can, because I'll open it up for questions so you guys can ask some questions to either of us. Or if you want us
Awesome.
to elaborate on anything that we may have missed during the interview. For now, I'll turn off the comments so that we can see Solomon. Give him another minute. How you doing, man?
Well, I'm all right. I'm good. I'm good. This is a doable time as well. It's like 6 p.m. for me, so I'm good.
Okay, good, good. I'm glad it's still light there too, huh? Because in London it stays
Yeah,
light super late, huh?
yeah. We're in the summer months, we're okay. In the winter, it's like midnight by now. It's so dark and
Yeah,
you can't see.
yeah. Well, that's great. Okay, I think we have a group in here now. So I do just want to start the interview by saying happy Juneteenth. Juneteenth is celebrated because it is the exact date when all enslaved people were finally emancipated from the Confederate States. And I do want to say that we need to not forget that regardless of their freedom, we have continued to persecute people for the color of their skin, and we must all do better and make an effort to be anti-racist. So
Absolutely.
everybody look inside yourself before you go telling other people what to do. It's really important we look inside ourselves before we do anything else. So everybody welcome Solomon. Thanks for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, it's good to see you. So you and I chatted about like a week ago. We had like a chat
Yeah.
with Geraldine here. We talked about a
hmm
lot of interesting things. So, and I followed you for a while and like admired the kind of way you operate in the dance and artistic world.
Thank you.
And so I want to, I'll start by asking because how long have you been freelancing now?
I moved back from San Francisco in
Okay.
I want to June or July. So it's nearly been a year.
Almost a year.
Yeah, pretty much a year since I've kind of, yeah, not been a part of, like I've had a contract with a ballet company, basically.
Okay. So like, how was that transition for you? And what have been some of your favorite projects or things you've been able to do now as a freelancer and not bound by, a company contract?
Yeah, well, basically, it's been a lot, it's been smoother than I expected it to be. I think there's a lot of fear when you leave a company and you don't have that for a period of time that you're going to get paid. Um, so I was nervous for that, but it's been great so far. And the most recent thing I've just done is been shooting a movie over in Budapest, which
Oh, nice.
we haven't actually finished it yet because obviously coronavirus has kind of put the gabosh on a lot. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I was shooting a movie, which was awesome. And, I think what I've enjoyed is having the time to do projects and the time
hmm
to, kind of fly places and work with photographers and work with choreographers and work with different people that I just didn't have during. I mean, I kind of made it work when I was dancing,
Yeah.
but I now have the freedom to kind of just explore other, well, not even other artistic disciplines, but also like collaborate them with what I know as a dancer. So that's been awesome.
Okay,
Um,
yeah, that's great. That's really cool. That's what I would imagine would be kind of exciting about going
yeah,
freelance.
yeah, 100%. Because you can just, you kind of seek out artists or you met certain people over the years that you've never had the time to work with, but
Yeah.
then now you're like free to do that.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Like, so, but you've kind of like, other than now being freelance and doing these extra projects, you've kind of done extracurricular projects and extra things your entire ballet career. So I kind of want to know, like, how did you use ballet or your position in the ballet world to your advantage? And did it help you? Like, do you feel like it really helped you get into the other kind of things and
Yeah,
also succeed?
100%. I think that as ballet dancers, I think there's such a currency for like I would say normal people when
Yeah.
they hear that you're a ballet dancer. There's kind of this mystery around it, and there's also kind of there's a level of respect that I think it's such a niche kind of workspace and
Mhm.
a niche art form and a niche job that people are like, oh, okay, like not anyone can. You always hear stories like,
Yeah.
oh, I used to do ballet when I was, you know,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Um, to actually be a professional ballet dancer, I think holds a lot of weight in so many different industries,
Yeah.
which I've used to my advantage. And also, like the name of the companies that I've danced for holds a lot of weight as well.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I've not really, I've actually, I feel like it holds more weight in the normal world than it does in the ballet world. Like it's kind of just been, I've opened so many doors.
That's so cool. Yeah, I think like it's interesting because you talked about how people always, you know, a lot of people have a story about like when they were a kid and they tried to dance or they
Yeah,
saw
yeah, yeah.
dancing. I think that's what's also interesting about the art form is that like, yeah, it is so niche, but there is this kind of general understanding of just like how hard it is or how like crazy it is to do it and to do it like for real. So when, you know, moving here to Chicago, I was surprised at the response that I would get after telling
Right.
people that I was a ballet dancer. It was
Yeah,
actually like a bigger response than I got from people in SF.
absolutely.
And it was always interesting because I was like, it's almost like their lack of understanding that makes them so intrigued by it.
Right, absolutely. And like also in not in a kind of aggressive way or in a mocky way. I think there is so much actual respect. I think that like for a long time, you know, especially being a male ballet dancer as well, there was so much I think there's so an idea of a lot of stigma. And I mean, I understand that people do get bullied, like males do get bullied for doing ballet. And
Yeah.
of course, I'm not saying that that doesn't happen. But what I do find is that I think there's like a higher response from us in the ballet community, expecting that people will kind of judge us for being dancers when actually out there is so much respect for what we do.
Yeah.
Um, you know, which is what it's been so pleasant to find. And, you know, similar to what you're saying as well, is that like actually it goes a long way.
Yeah, because we deal with a lot of like, you know, mockery and being made fun of as kids. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's like this sort of time in your life when it just totally kind of flips.
Yeah,
And it's not what you're used to. Like you know, I've been hesitant many times when people go, "Oh yeah, so like what do you do?" I'm like
yeah.
always like I'm
Oh,
and you know, I always say it proudly, but there's always that second of like, God, what's this reaction going to be? And for the
absolutely.
most part, it's really, really positive.
Hmm.
And like, I think that's a good thing. And I think it's also a good thing for people to know that you can monetize your dancing into
Oh,
something
100%.
else, you
100%.
know?
I think that was, you know, talking about me doing it during my career. Like I had been, you know, I've done modeling and stuff alongside being in these ballet companies, and that for me was more important than what I was doing on stage. Because on the other hand, as well, like a reality is that the companies I worked for would kind of push and promote certain dancers. I think that's just like reality. There were some people that they are going to make principles and like push
Yeah.
through. And then there are
Hmm.
others of us, I'm one of those who have to make their own luck. You know, I didn't have many photos of me dancing on stage. I didn't have many photos of me kind of in that kind of circulation that they were like, that the company was pushing. So I kind of had to make my own luck and make my own kind of name because, you
Hmm.
know, for a lot of dancers and kind of Europe works this way a lot more in that, you know, not all of us are from a wealthy background. You know, it was because of my talent that I got into the Royal Ballet School and joined the Royal Ballet and all the rest of it. But if I, you know, also if I want to make a certain life for myself, then there is certain things that I have to do in regards to like making my name, monetizing it. And so for me, a big part of it was finding my own kind of path outside being in magazines, photo shoots, all of that to kind of build my own content. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
kind of and say it as truly as I wanted to say. So it wasn't at all kind of had a kind of spin on it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything that I was saying was like mine.
Oh, you
You know?
paused.
Sorry, did I cut out at one
Yeah.
point?
It was like you were kind of controlling your own narrative and destiny.
Yeah,
You
exactly,
cut out for a
exactly.
sec, but it's okay.
Okay.
I've, yeah. And also like, I do want to ask you because, you know, you did dance with the Royal Ballet and you danced with San Francisco Ballet, but, you know, we both trained at the Royal Ballet School, and you talk about how you got there because you had to get there because of your talent. And like, you know, in a way that was similar for me, like I had to be scholarshiped and I had to get in because I was good. You know, I was also like turning into a tall male with dark hair and light skin. And so that also helps. But I want to know, because something that I've learned about even more lately, and you know, I consider myself a conscious person, but something I've learned about lately is that my experience at the Royal Ballet School, as hard as it was for me, is very different for someone of color or a Black person, you know, because, you know, I do identify as a person of color, but I know that the way I look affords me a certain privilege. So I do want to know about your specific experience at the Royal Ballet School, and not just like exact incidents of racism, but the microaggressions that kind of come with it.
Well, so interestingly, when I auditioned for the Royal Ballet School. So I went to the Royal Ballet School for 8 years. I was part of the White Lodge as well. So I did like the whole spiel of
you did the whole thing
of the Royal Ballet School.
Okay, cool, yeah.
And when I auditioned for the Royal Ballet School, actually, and it was something that just kind of shows just an attitude towards certain things. So when I auditioned for the Royal Ballet School, I was raised Rastafarian, right? So I had dreadlocks, and my whole family has dreadlocks. And that was what I auditioned with. So I was already part of the junior associates, which were like the age that White Lodge starts is like 11 years old. And so if you're before that age, there's like a little program that you can do. So I was already part of that. And then the Royal Ballet School audition came up, right? And so there's 2 auditions for the Royal Ballet School. And I went to the first audition, and I've always been very confident and just, you know, I'm like confident in my abilities. So I did the audition. I felt like I nailed it. Everything was great. And like a week later, I got my letter home saying that we haven't offered you a place in the Royal Ballet School, right? So I was like distraught, you know. And then basically what ended up happening, but there was like about a month between the 2 auditions. And in that time, there was an outbreak of head lice at my like local school, and I got head lice. And so my family, like my mum decided that, you know, we had to shave my head to get rid of the infestation. So I shaved my head and continued going to the junior associates ballet classes. And then Galen Stock, who was the director at the time of the Royal Ballet School, came into one of my junior associates classes. And then, so that was like on the Saturday. And then by the Monday, she called my mum and said, we're offering Solomon a full scholarship into the Royal Ballet School.
Oh my God.
Before the second audition had even happened. So I found out about my place in the Royal Ballet School before they'd even finalized places for the other guys. So I didn't have to do the second audition either. So it was like what had changed in that time was me cutting my hair. And look, I'm not saying that, you know, I understand the ways in which like we present ourselves on stage and all of those kind of things. But it was just a moment for me to realize that, you know, on one hand, there's certain things that how you look that can affect, you know, everything. Like, so they were willing to not have me in the school because of my hair, and regardless of my talent. And so for me, like, the opposite is also true. There are people who look a certain way and look so kind of what, you know, people imagine.
Supposedly the part.
Right. And so if you can not have me in the school, regardless of my talent, you can have someone in the school, regardless of their talent.
Regardless of their talent.
So I'm not saying that, and everyone has their own experience, and I'm not saying ballet is easy for anyone, but there are things that before it even comes down to how you technically dance are taken into account. And you know, and then, you know, I ended up being, when I joined the Royal Ballet School, the Royal Ballet Company, I was the only one from my original year at White Lodge to get into the Royal Ballet Company. So, you know, if I had never cut my hair, I wouldn't have been there to do that. So I think it was just, you know, there's things like that where it just shows a level of kind of, it's an uneven playing field, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think like, I don't know if we discussed this when we FaceTime, but I think that like part of it is like everybody has had to like look a certain way for their audition. Like everybody's thought about looking a certain way for their audition.
Yeah.
But I think in the ballet world and as a whole, we need to ask ourselves, what's an appropriate way to look?
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like why was your hair inappropriate? Like, because
Yeah.
if I look back at my pictures of when I auditioned for the Royal Ballet School, like my hair was like dyed black and it was down like to my hair like this, and it was like kind of big and like it looked like kind of like punk rock hair.
Yeah.
Obviously, like not dreadlocks and hanging in
Yeah.
certain areas where like, you know, they want to see your shoulders and all that,
Right.
right? Like
Yeah.
women wear buns because they
Yeah.
want to see neck and shoulders. So like
Yeah.
that's the thing is like it's a difficult conversation, because I'm sure if you asked Galen Stock, she would say, "No, I'm not like a racist. I
No, no, no.
and
Exactly.
rest in peace to Galen Stock as well."
Yeah.
But like,
We love Killing.
she would not have. Yeah, we do. But she would
Yeah.
not have felt that she was making sort of a racist,
Exactly.
like
And I think that
microaggression.
absolutely, and that's the point as well, especially when we're having these conversations around ballet and racism, because I think people think of racism as an act, like either
Yeah,
you're actively being racist or you're not.
yeah,
And it's not. I think we're all kind of waking up to a bit more now is that it's a system and it's an idea and
yeah,
it's kind of weaseled its way into our lives where we make decisions based off of it without even thinking about it, right?
yeah,
And so when someone comes to you and says like, well, you know, I feel that you're judging me, you know, the fact that you would keep someone out because of the way they look, you know, and, you know, coming at someone and saying, oh, that's racism, they would be like, no, 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 absolutely not. And that is a lot of we do get pushed back a lot of the times when
yeah,
anyone tries to bring these things up, because it's
yeah.
that idea of like seeing racism as an action as opposed to just like a thought or a lens that people
Yeah,
possess.
or like how what we're brought up under, the society we brought up under. Like
Absolutely.
also bringing, it's very tough because it's like bringing it up. They can easily go, no, look, I just don't think we got a good enough look at you in the first audition, and you know, I
Right.
came in to see you this day, and I thought, oh, you know, he needs to be in the school. Like it's very easy to like skirt
Explain it
people's
away.
views,
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know.
Yeah.
And I think our years of kind of explaining it away
Yeah.
has done us a detriment. Even
Absolutely.
though people's intentions were probably good, I think
Yeah.
it's done us a detriment instead of just being like, well,
A hundred
what is
percent.
wrong with that, right?
Yeah.
And like maybe if we were, you know, we say we're accepting of black people, but only in a certain box, right? At the same time, like I'm sure you dealt with the fact that you're half white, right? Half white and half
Yeah.
black,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and there's a lot of full black people that I think deal with an even different set of
100%.
issues
And
than
this is
even you do.
100%. And that's also the other thing that I would be clear in saying is that, you know, a lot of, you know, I found in the Royal Ballet and San Francisco Ballet was that, you know, I've been used a lot for, you know, outreach and diversity and inclusion. But I think a lot of our diversity and inclusion is, I mean, I think I was positively stereotyped because I was more close to white than I like
Yeah.
white than a full black person would be. Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean? I think there are levels as well of like of kind of being black, like, you know, hair and
Yeah,
dark
totally.
skin. But you can't just say, oh yeah, we have a black person and they're half white. You know what I mean? Or they
Yeah.
have Eurocentric features and try and say that we've solved the problem. Because, you know, I don't think I've ever seen a black woman dance on the Opera House stage as part of the company, like full black.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think maybe Eric Underwood was maybe the darkest guy who had danced for the Royal Ballet.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we like talking about these things where it's like I'm like, also it's important to be clear about like shades as well. There is like colorism is a thing,
Yeah.
and you know, people kind of say, oh look, we've solved it, and it's like that person is like the closest they could be to white without being white. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
well, and also like we haven't solved it just because like one person is here.
Right.
Like, you know, and I look at like I really admire Brooklyn Mac, right? Like just because he's an amazing dancer and a really great guy. And I
Yeah.
don't really think much else of anything, but like in this time I've thought about like just kind of how incredible it is, and like it like how incredible it is that he's done, you know, like
Yeah.
where he's danced, where he's guested, the roles that he's danced, like they're all what someone that good should be doing. But
Yeah.
at the same time, like I'm sure there's a lot of people that, and I think people did the same thing with Carlos Acosta. Like I don't even think they saw the color, you know,
No.
really.
Yeah.
And I think the more we just, the more a ballet company uses talented BIPOC people
Yeah.
without making such a deal of it
Yeah.
is the way we're also going to progress. Because I
Yeah.
think the more you mention it in regards to somebody, the more it kind of like takes away from just their actual talent level and what they're bringing to the table.
Well, that's the thing. And I think also it's important as well, is like when we're looking, like having these discussions, is that I think another thing for me, and like dancing, like say for the Royal Ballet, for example, like there is a difference in what we expect from black dancers and what we accept from white dancers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm speaking very, very generally, but you know, I have seen that we've basically, like, black dancers are there to be, there has to be a certain level of technicality.
They have to be exceptional, whereas other
They
people can just simply look like someone else and do well.
Right, and you know, and it is true that there are people, and like in the same way where, because we stand out, you know, there aren't many black dancers in companies, so when you're on stage, you stand out. When you're in class, you stand out, and so we always kind of have a focus on us.
Yeah.
That means that our standard has to be, like, I'm speaking from my personal experience, but like that our standard has to be higher to have. Like, you know, a place at the table, or even like the opportunity. And then once, you know, I've experienced once I get into a company that, okay, if like, I'm using the analogy of a race, right? And that every dancer is like lined up next to each other, you know, and is able to run the race to principle or whatever it is. But black dancers are usually lined up behind each other. So we'll have one guy in front of us and then we're behind that guy.
Yeah.
And so if they mess up or if they fall out or whatever, then someone else takes that place, but there can only be one. It always feels that way. It really does feel like, you know, it was Carlos and then it was Marcy and then it was, you know, it was like, and everyone else had to cover that person. Like I covered Marcy a lot. There wasn't real space for us to kind of have our own kind of artistry, because it was just like, oh, you'll cover those person and that person will cover you. And
I mean, Marcy is a completely different dancer to Carlos, and you're different from Marcy. Like,
exactly, and that's the thing. We're not allowed the kind of the free agency over our artistry. You know, where it's like, I think they accept. I think you know, there's been times where they accept our art, but only in certain ways, and that it seems that it's fine for, you know, white dancers to kind of explore what they want to explore and be the dancer they want to be. But I've seen that. And even when I went to San Francisco, and another dancer who had previously left was a soloist, and I went into his costumes, and he was a black guy as well. I went into his costumes, and you know, and it was just like, I'm not, there isn't just like,
am I just ticking a box, or am I actually here because I'm supposed to be here? Like,
exactly.
And I think, you know, honestly, like that happens with like ballet does that, because it's kind of like a sport where, like, in sports they're like, you know, this guy looks like this guy, so he'll probably be really successful if we work him the right way. He can be like that. And I think it's okay to do that, but I think, like, not with skin color being the basis. Like, obviously, right? Like, you can be like someone else and not have the same skin tone or whatever.
Right, exactly.
Like, so why wouldn't you be covering that person? And, you know, they do it sometimes with Asian people as well. Like, there'll be a funny part in a ballet that an Asian person did, and then the person covering it will be another Asian boy. And it's like, you guys, come on. Like, anybody can be funny in that bit if they're a funny person. Like, cast it that way. And do the same with black dancers. Don't look, and it's why we need to start saying, don't look at people for what box they're going to tick. Like, look at people for what they're going to bring to your company, and then 100%. Act on that. Like, stop trying to compare to something else.
100%. And I think that is kind of one of the things that I have the biggest issue with in ballet. And I think it kind of shortcuts the, like, the requirement for you to be artistically, like have artistic vocabulary as a director or as a ballet master or as a choreographer or whoever it is, for you to be like, see past skin deep, right? So, like, what is it that an artist brings that is like them, as opposed to like their skin color and all of this other stuff? I just feel it's very surface kind of thing. And, you know, they do it in the opposite way, where they promote someone because, oh, that person reminds me of Nureyev, or that person reminds me of Jane, and, you know, and so it's that person will get, you know, have this kind of point of reference that is easy for them to kind of cultivate and pitch as the next this. But, you know, I think there's this idea of trying to get the next whatever, but it's like, why don't
Yeah,
we have something, or
and
why don't we?
that falls in line with like the traditionalism of ballet too. Like I
Yeah,
think the more we try to get away from that tradition, and the more we
yeah,
understand that that tradition is like very much can easily be rooted in racism and
yeah,
sexism and misogyny and all this, like the more we realize that, the more we're free. Like
yeah,
and the less directors will feel like they're looking for this and looking for
yeah.
that. When you're just looking for
Great art,
more
like, yeah,
artistic dance greatness, like
yeah.
black
And that's
dancers
the,
are out there, like they're
yeah,
out
and
there.
that's the
Dance
same
studio
with
problems.
choreography. Absolutely, it's the same with choreography. That's the same with, you know, like who directs companies. I think, you know, there's so much. You know, it's this weird thing because I don't think like enough. Like for me, I've always had an issue with, or I found issue with certain directors having a great career as a dancer, and then that qualifies them to be a director, or like
Yeah,
they had a great career as a dancer, and that qualifies them to be a choreographer. Like there are people who study this stuff and like go to school or really like dedicate their lives to doing those things, but you know, because someone has a great career, and I think it also got to marry into like ticket sales and other things where it's like they're a draw and all the rest of it. But I'm just like, I believe if you're making good art, people will come and see it, and
yeah,
you know, you don't all these weird kind of things because some people are unqualified and just
yeah,
quite simply,
straight up.
and they're unqualified to do it, and regardless of how great their career was and regardless of like how famous they were as dancers, they're completely different jobs, I believe.
Yeah,
And
and
I
also
think
like
that,
it doesn't always take a lot of leadership to be a great principal dancer.
right,
And it takes
exactly,
a lot of leadership and smarts to be a director. And
yeah,
like and I think like this art form is a fragile art form, so I think
mhm,
we're constantly trying to find a way to keep it afloat, and so that's why
yeah,
they do those things. Like,
yeah,
oh, this person sold a lot of tickets, they were really famous, like they can help us keep going just based off
yeah,
of that alone.
yeah,
And you know, yeah, I think it's important to like look more into just like who's doing good work,
absolutely.
and like look for it because it's not always just right. It's not always right in front of your face.
Yeah, and
And
also is there not some people don't feel like, you know, you have to sometimes go out and look for stuff because people don't feel like they can just come to you and say, look, I've got this awesome thing idea that I'd love to, you know, and you can't expect people to do that regardless of the legacy of your company or how famous your dancers were or whatever.
yeah,
People aren't going to feel like they can just walk up to the front door and knock on it. Like you have to
yeah,
go out and look for it and find it, and it's out there, and also kind of challenge yourself to go beyond what is comfortable. You know, I find that ballet has sat in a comfort zone for a while,
hmm,
and that, you know, it needs to kind of explore the art form more. You know, and I
yeah,
think and that with black choreographers and female choreographers, I think, you know, no one's trying to say that people don't have a voice, like white people don't have a voice and it's not a white art, like we're trying to kind of erase something. What I'm speaking of and what I'm kind of petitioning for is an expansion. So like finding all of that stuff from more sources, you know what I mean, that can only
yeah,
enrich us. About changing it, it's about enriching it, and you
yeah,
know, and that's where it comes from. You know, it's not like people are trying to tear it down and make it into something it's not. You
yeah.
know,
Of
Wayne
course.
Dyer has done incredible work. You know, I mean, he's like absolutely revered everywhere, and his whole thing is exploring ballet and exploring its artistry and exploring different ways we can do it. And there are many people out there, so we will accept it from people, but we just have to make sure that we accept it from more than just kind of white guys.
Yeah, of course. And I think like again, that argument of like, why are you trying to erase this and that? It's like if that's really the route you want to go down when we're talking
Yeah,
about like diversity,
yeah,
equity, inclusion, like
yeah,
we're talking about a group of people that have already been erased for such a long time. And now you're
absolutely,
trying to get upset that they're trying to erase something. You're not trying to erase or do anything bad to anybody.
absolutely,
You're trying to just have your place in the world because it's just as valid as anybody else, if not in
100%.
many cases more.
Yeah, and you know, and if I'm calling out the fact that we shouldn't be doing yellow face anymore, and we shouldn't be like darkening up as and show portraying caricatures of people's culture on stage,
Yeah.
if that pisses you off, sorry for swearing, but if that upsets you, then be upset because that has been like actual hostility towards certain people for a
Yeah.
very long time. that, you know, I mean, we have to be responsible in having these discussions as well and holding the art form to account when we say, listen, these caricatures are unacceptable. They were
Yeah.
racist when they were made, and they're still racist now. It's
Yeah.
not changing because, oh, it was at a different time. I'm sorry, it's not a debate, and it's like fully inappropriate that anyone should be any caricatures of anyone. And, you know, and people have accepted that from the art form. Many of your favorite ballet dancers of all time, I haven't heard speak up about caricaturing in ballet. You know what I mean? So, like, I think what I'm asking for the dance community as well is just to hold ourselves to a bit more account, where it's like we're seeing certain things which are just not okay, then we're speaking up about it, you know? And it's not about erasure, and it's not about changing, and it's not about, you know, whatever anyone wants to make it be. It's things that should never have existed are still...
And at the end of the day, like, that's just going to make our art form way better and way more accessible and way more popular when we're not just consciously or unconsciously erasing somebody's identity or making fun of it and making it seem normal. Because, I mean, for as long as I can remember, like, I've watched The Nutcracker and never thought it took any issue with any of the second act, right? Or like La Corsaire, for that matter. Like, it's always just been like, oh, it's entertainment, it's fun, and it's like, yeah, because it doesn't apply to me, right? But like, if it applies to someone else, it does apply to me, because I care. We should care about the ballet world as a whole, and we should care about others in it, other than whether it's just inflicting us all the time.
Absolutely. And looking at the works that we are a part of, and, you know, if they cause harm to people, you know, if that is like perpetuating a certain idea of how people are supposed to be or whatever, like, it just, you know, isn't what we should be doing, and we should be talking about it. You know, I think there's so much about like discussion and making people aware, because a lot of people just aren't aware, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think let's open it up for some questions now, because we have some people in here, and you are really touching on some wonderful things that we need to get on. So I think if anybody in the comments right now has any questions for Solomon regarding his career, or, you know, his ideas of what we can make better, please go ahead and say it right now. And if not, I can just ask him another question for myself. Hi, Masha says, thank you. Please save this conversation. We will. We'll save it. We can like post clips of it later or something. Masha. Was she at SFB with you?
Yeah. She was at SFB.
Cool. Yeah. Same with me. That's when I first met her. Okay. Well, while we wait.
But that was when I really like met her, was in SFB.
Yeah. While we wait for some questions, I'll just ask you. You started your own production company, right?
Yes.
So I know you just had like a year of so much love right now. That's so great. You've had a year of being freelance, but were there any projects that you yourself had started or gotten going?
Do you know what? There's so many projects that I'm like have had in the works, and I'm like trying to get made. I think so much. I kind of underestimated the business side of show business.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
So, you know, I'm doing a lot of learning at the moment. I'm like applying to schools and courses and stuff just to kind of learn more about just about the business side of things. I've got so many ideas that I want to get out there. And like House of Solomon really was like, it started as kind of like art. So basically, like through me doing as much as I've done outside of my career in regards to like modeling and film and all of that stuff, I've just met the most incredible, talented people. And also I know so many incredible dancers who the mainstream might not know, or, you know, ballet don't push as tote them as stars or whatever, but they are like incredible artists. And I've just met so many people from fashion and film and art that I will just want to make a space for people to collaborate, right? But also like make people are getting paid and make sure that, you know, we have the right kind of backing and stuff for that. So, you know, I hope people can just remain patient with me, because I have so many things, but I just want them to be done right. And you know, I'm looking at, you know, also from me doing like photo shoots and just seeing the way that people want to photograph dancers and want to kind of have that, but they don't know how to accommodate dancers all the time. You know, I've done photo shoots where I'm jumping on like concrete floors and stuff, and they're like, just do it one more time and on your head. And I'm like, okay, chill. And
Yeah,
also the fact that like I'm a dancer, I'm not a choreographer, and that's a difference. You know, I think there's people
totally.
who like,
Yeah. So many
make a
times
thing.
I get people like, just make something up. And I'm like,
Yeah, I'm
like, yeah.
yeah, it's not my strength. I'm like all for like delegating. I know awesome like choreographers, and so it's just basically House of Solomon was just made in a space where like of collaboration between so many different like disciplines and things. So that's what I'm going
Yeah.
to be.
I mean, we will be patient. I think like what's great about this generation is I think that when we do start our next projects, like we're going to
Mhm.
be the generation that hopefully pays people and
Right,
doesn't ask for things for exposure and like
right,
really tries to do it right. Like that's what I've been thinking because I would also like to kind of do the same thing with a production
yeah,
company. And I keep thinking to myself like before you just go running off doing stuff, like let's make
right.
sure whoever's involved or we've consulted with gets
Mhm.
gets their bag for it. You know what I'm saying? If we
Absolutely,
can.
absolutely.
Because I think what we find in the arts is that we find people like will take a consideration just because you gave it to them. Like,
Yeah,
you know, like we understand that budgets are small, but I think a consideration and like a goal of doing better and paying and like figuring it out is the best. We have a
yeah.
question from Madison, and she says, "Do you notice more racial discrimination and typecasting in ballet in the U.S. or outside of the U.S.?" It's a good question.
I think, you know, I think it exists everywhere. I think I have I've faced it both in both Europe and the US. And I think, you know, I would probably say it's based in classicism and Eurocentricity. Like ballet is a Eurocentric art form. And so, you know, and when I say that, I'm also looking at kind of white supremacy within that and colonialism. And I think
Hmm.
also the time in which it was kind of, it found its
Creative.
roots and
Yeah.
where it came from. I think that has kind of been a pervasive part of it. And I think we kind of take it for advantage that like, oh, that's just how ballet is. But you
Hmm.
know, I think some of those things have crept over from Europe to the US. So I think they exist absolutely in both, you know, in
Yeah.
the same way.
Yeah. And I think like the more we find new rep and find new choreographers and find new stories to tell, like better stories to tell,
100%.
the more we'll get away from it. Because there's plenty of
Yeah,
people creating full length classical ballets. And if they were implored more to touch on different things, or if we found more choreographers of color to touch on those things and create full ballets, like that's when we're going to have real progress and yet
absolutely.
still have our art form, you know?
Absolutely, and I think it's just like, you know, I posed a question on my Instagram. It's like how much has ballet perpetuated this idea of like
Yeah.
heteronormative white supremacy? And it's just kind of just a question to say like, what is it that we're saying? Like, just what is it that what are we trying to put out there? You know, and I
Yeah.
said that also in regards to just like gender. And I'm not. I think when I speak about gender, people kind of think that it's gonna. There's a big pushback against it because people think that I'm trying to say that men should be women and women should be men. I'm not saying that, but I'm just trying to not make our kind of our view, our aspect as binary as it has been, you know, because
Yeah.
that again is also hostility towards some people, how they naturally are, how they naturally present.
Yeah.
Um, People have been actively told, I've been actively told not to present the way that I am, you know, and it's like when you're telling someone to not be who they are or dance in the way that they aren't, um, dance in a way that comes naturally to them and then telling them that's not the way they should be is damaging to people, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think if we can have a bit more space for dancers to be dancers, you know,
Yeah.
and more than just it being about, oh, this guy is, be it like I can believe that he's straight or this woman is, you know, it's just kind of
Yeah.
like, you know, especially in our in artistic, we're in the
Yeah.
arts.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we have a lot of male female stories and like obviously it is an athletic art form and like
Yeah,
a lot of people's athletic genes come from whatever they were born as, right? Not regardless of what they identify as. But like there's still room for there still should be room for it all.
absolutely. You
You
know,
know,
because
and there's a way we can do it. I mean, what we're creatives at the end of the day. Like let's stop making excuses and like just figure it out.
that's the point as well, is that like we are kind of best situated for this. And I think there are some very, very athletic women who can do male technique. You know, I've seen girls do double toes and double soda bars.
Or partner another woman or a man.
Right, exactly. And I'm not saying that they should be the prince in the ballet, but what I'm just saying is that like we should also give those people space to show what they're good at and what they can do.
Totally.
And conversely, you know, like men are I think we should be promoting this idea of like being emotional, being sensitive, you know. And I think there's been a hostile environment for as a gay man, there's been a hostile environment towards, you know, like masculinity and how you present as a man.
Yeah, totally.
And it's really based in this idea that, you know, I think there's a stigma to being a male ballet dancer from society, right? That people think we're sissies and all of that stuff. But I think the ballet has really taken that to heart and tried to prove that that's not true.
Totally.
And it's made a really hostile environment for gay men and people who are, you know, flamboyant or are camp or whatever it is, or like, you know, effeminate. You know, it's made it so because they are becoming a stereotype. You know, it's just this weird kind of thing of trying to...
Like, I feel like we should let the stereotypes be the problem of the people stereotyping.
Right,
and we should just move through it, you know?
100%.
Gabe asked, do you think telling African stories through classical vocabulary would be beneficial?
Absolutely. I think, you know, I had there's an African and Caribbean like folk story about Nancy the spider, and I think it would be an awesome story. And there's so many stories from Africa, and there's so much like there's so many cultural so much cultural like vocabulary and
background and language.
And just so much there, so much content, so much material that would make incredible ballets and incredible bits of work and music that it's been, you know. And also there's so many Black people from Europe, you know, like I think I've seen a lot as well of people saying to me, oh, why don't you just, if you don't like ballet so much, why don't you go and do African dance? I'm British, I'm born in London.
Ignorant.
You know what I mean? It's like ballet is my culture.
I just think the notion of if you don't like it, leave is so asinine because it's because I like it and love it that I criticize it.
Right, absolutely.
Like because I care about it, that I want it to be better. Like
100%.
And if you just quit on anything that got hard, like what are you going to accomplish in life? What's going to change? It's so. I'm sorry you've had to hear that so often. I don't hear it at all.
I think people think it's a genuine argument to say, right, if Black dancers aren't happy doing, you know, Eurocentric things like
further segregate yourself. No.
Right, but also as well, it's like there are Black Europeans, you know, and you know, and it's like I am from London. I'm from the UK. I was born here. And so for me, I think there is so, like, I'm lucky because I'm kind of like, I've got the African side as well, but ballet is part of my life. It's part of my
upbringing,
So it's like, I'm able to comment on it in the same way as my white brethren.
It's also why we need more diverse, like, artistic staffs as well, because I think like, and also donors, because the more the people donating are the ones with, the wanting to see themselves in it, or the more that our artistic staff like is bringing up these kinds of stories that like
100%.
Like don't
you know it's throughout it's throughout the whole thing, because you know I can attest to being in the UK and being part of the Royal Ballet School and Royal Ballet Institution for a big part of my career, is that I think we do cater to just the same audiences. And I think, you know, it's this, I'm interested to see how the whole landscape is going to shift after COVID-19 and coronavirus. I think there's a big shift in how and we do dance and the ways in which we do it. But I think it's important for us to be relevant to more than just those who regularly.
We need to more reflect our society and what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, even if it's like a story from old that like can really, that has never been told and that can really like relate
but
to
even
what's
like
happening.
even like in the Bible, I'm not really a religious person at all, but there are incredible stories from the Bible and in the Bible that would make incredible ballets which don't really have wouldn't require to be an all white cast, or you
Yeah.
know what I mean? There's so much that we already have. It's also the stories that we choose to tell, and the things that we, you know, I love a fairy tale as much as the next person, but they're just like,
There's so many.
it's just like there's just much more out there as well, just, you know, beyond, and which can be lucrative, which can get audiences. I think there's this idea that you almost sacrifice the money side of it if you do anything that's not Swan Lake and not Sleeping Beauty, and I'm like, no, people are interested. That's also another point that I'm always banging on about, is like a good PR team.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is like when we're doing Swan Lake, like they put the money up for ads, right? For the advertisements. And then with other things, and like this is more than just black and white for them, like as far as difficulty, like I know it's hard to do, but when we have like a more mixed rep with someone new, or like, you know, when we were doing Ekman and we were, you know, dancing in heels or whatever we were doing, like it was always like harder for them to market. And it was like, but like, why? Like, you spend X amount of dollars on marketing Swan Lake because you know it'll draw the crowd. But like maybe if you put that initial investment in something that you're not as sure about, which I know is a hard gamble for ballet companies to make because they're already fragile. But like imagine if you made people understand what they were coming to see before they came. Like they'd probably be even more excited, because they'd be like, what is this? Like this looks crazy, and like everything behind it is so, you know.
I think also as well is, I think someone else asked a question, but I think also, which is another thing in which I think keeps dancers so disempowered, is the fact that they don't own rights to their image. And I understand there's like union issues, and I think there's things that can be ironed out, but it really does need to be discussed more about making your dancers able to promote the work that they're in, you know, and able to have fans and promote them to have that, and kind of make it so it's not just the company promoting ballets, it's
the company.
It's the whole company. If you have a company of 100 dancers, and even if they only have 1,000 followers each, that's 100,000 followers, like people already that have access to whatever it is you're selling. I think there's also a kind of slow uptake on things like social media. And so interestingly, this is just, and it's all to do with that traditional classicism thing. I remember when we were at the Royal Ballet School that there was pushback for, I think that it went through stages of, you know, sports science, for example. When sports science came in, and injury prevention and all of this stuff, we would hear our ballet teachers like almost poo-poo it, you know, like, well, we never needed this when we were
never had that. And it's like, yeah, but your career ended when you were like 28. That's because you needed it.
Yeah. Right, exactly. And so it's these ideas of using modern technology and modern things in this.
Belong.
Yeah, it's like, no, the two are like not mutually exclusive. And it's like, well, I think when it comes to PR and that kind of thing, like social media, it's so important for people to feel, dancers to be able to promote the work that they're in and feel like there is a part, you know, for them to play within that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, social media has done a lot of good for the ballet world. Like, you know, and like, there's a lot of stuff out there that's very like kitschy and annoying, and just like one person doing one trick for 9 seconds over and over. But like at the same time, like there's a lot that like we're understanding about dancers. And like part of the reason why I know about you is like, we both went to Royal Ballet School, but at completely different times. And the reason why I know about you is because like I saw your Instagram and I was like, man, he looks hella cool, and like he kind of has more going on than just being a ballet dancer, and I'm drawn to that. And so like,
but that's the thing, it's the ability to find, like I found so many incredible choreographers and had access to so many incredible people that I wouldn't have if I didn't have social media, right? And so it's like it's a tool that can be used by companies as well, which can find people are putting, it's like an online portfolio. It's like you're your own agent, you know?
Yeah, and I think like obviously dancers have to be responsible about it too, because
100%.
you know, we can't be posting bloopers mid-performance where like some trust is going to be like, what are you doing with our ballet kind of thing, you know? Like we need to take responsibility for it, but like I think if we're given responsibility, like we'll take it, just like we do with roles.
100%.
You know?
Yeah. 100%.
We got one more. Let's do one more question just from Madison again. It's like, do you think Balanchine played a positive role in diversifying classical ballet?
Yeah, I think he did. I think Arthur Mitchell has been a huge inspiration to a lot of like black dancers. But, you know, I think, not to like cause the ire or to get the ire of like American dancers, but I think he worked in not always the most healthy environments, and I think that has been passed on to a lot of directors who are now working, and
Yeah.
people who think there's certain behavior that is acceptable and it just absolutely isn't. And I think also, you know, we have to kind of unmarry ourselves from this idea that if someone's talented or touted as a genius, that they're able to get away with certain behavior that is unacceptable. And so, you know, I think Balanchine I think he's an absolute genius as a choreographer, but I also dealt with the fallout of directors who've worked under him and people in the ballet world who've worked under him and worked closely with him, and how they behave now in this modern setting, which is completely unacceptable. So, you know, I think
it was almost made cool, like how he used to be. Like, oh, Balanchine used to do this, and like hearing it now, you kind of go like, that's awful. Like, he's great, but yeah.
Yeah, I think you're not going to like, you know, I'm not going to be struck by a bolt of lightning thrown by Mr. B if I just say, you know, if I believe that, no, there were ways in which he behaved that was unacceptable. And we're allowed to say that as well, you know? I mean, there's many choreographers who behaved in a way. And I think that's also my other point as well, is that I will say to any directors, any ballet masters, or any kind of one who's older generations, the stuff that happened to you was abuse then, and it's still abuse now. And,
still is now,
you know, so it can't be used as an excuse to overlook certain behavior or not try and change certain things, because it's like, you know, it was abuse and it's abuse now. So
yeah, like greatness can't be your hall pass to behave the way. And like that's also a huge issue in our society. Like Hollywood has had the same issues that like if you're talented, if you're cool, you can do whatever the hell you want. And like I think the more we hold each other accountable for that, and like there's something that I'll say about my director, like everybody has their faults, but like I haven't witnessed another director like be so the antithesis of how they were treated. Like and like not everybody does a perfect job. Like but like with Ashley, he's very, very good at like recognizing that like he didn't like how it was.
Right.
And that like he felt really nurtured by one person, and so he took that on. And tried to do it. And I think like the more we try and do that, like the better we'll get at it.
Absolutely.
And like the less stories we'll have of like this happened to me and it was totally messed up, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, you hear these horror stories and I'm just like, that is abuse, you know? And I'm just like, okay, right? And like, have you spoken to someone about it? Because it's, you know, I think there's just like a lot of healing that we need to do in that respect, and just kind of understanding that certain things that were said to you were not okay, and certain ways that you were treated were not okay. And, you know, for me, pointing it out now is that, like, if someone was treating me that way and I call it out, which I have done, you know, okay, you might see me as a troublemaker, but again, it was abuse then and it's still abuse now. And regardless if I'm the only one saying it or if everyone else is agreeing with me, it shouldn't matter really in that, in, you know?
Yeah, it's because like the history of ballet is a bit oppressive. Like if you hear our predecessors, like they always talk about how like, oh, I could never speak up the way you kids do these days. And I think it's like, because we've kind of started to realize our own worth, sometimes thanks to social media and thanks to other things. And we've gotten this position of like, oh, I'm not with this. This is not going to happen with me. And I think like that's another conversation that like I've understood that like I've gotten really good at that, at like pushing back and not letting things happen to me. But again, I've reckoned with the fact that my privilege played a role in that. And that there are women and Black men and Hispanic people that are brown and dark that would have felt really afraid to say anything like that, because 100%. They're like, I have enough going against me. I don't need to be angry person of BIPOC person.
Yeah,
and like the more we afford that like ability to speak up to everyone, the better we'll all be. Like at the
100%. You know, because I think also we have to understand as well, and I think, you know, as I say that to like the older generations of dancers, because, you know, I'm not ignorant to the fact that there are things that were going on in society. So we think of like the ballet world as having its own kind of like historical trajectory, but there's stuff that's going on in wider society. Like there has been points in the UK's history where it's been illegal to be gay. You know, in America there was segregation. Like, you know, these things didn't happen in some other planet. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it's
they also
that
didn't
kind of
happen that
stuff.
long ago.
Right, exactly. And that stuff affected and still affects what is going on today. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the ballet world and society in general. But then, you know, I'm talking about, you know, where a gay, I've probably, out of all the teachers who have told me not to be as effeminate, it's usually gay men. And because, and I'm not ignorant to the fact that there was a point in history where you had to not be who you are. Like, literally by law, you weren't allowed to be that way.
Yeah.
And the same with, it was by law that you weren't allowed to mix with white people. So, you know, I'm not ignorant to that fact, but we are not in that time anymore. And it's important for us to not to continue that cycle of trauma for people, you know, because, yeah.
Yeah, and like, yeah, absolutely. Like, of course, it's going to come from someone gay or someone else that is black, kind of telling you how to fit in, because that's like what they had to do it. And I think also what happens in our society is every time we progress, we act like, oh, that's a thing of the past. It's gone now. Like slavery's over. It's gone now. It wasn't gone. It was turned into the new Jim Crow. It was turned into our prison system. Like,
100%.
and the more we realize that the job is not done when all of a sudden the law is passed. Like, the Breonna Taylor law passed, but the people who killed her are still cops. Like, the more we understand that, like, there's more that has to be done than just like us all saying that it was wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
And
exactly.
Like ballet can do it. Like, it would be great.
I don't doubt it. That's the whole point. I don't doubt that at all. And that's the thing. And I love the art form so much. I love dancing. I love facilitating dance. But there are issues. There are issues that have been there for a long, long time, and that it's important for us to really start kind of implementing changes and coming together and trying to figure out solutions to these problems, because it's not good enough to try and keep it there's no normal that it can go back to, you know what I mean? I think it's doing us all a disservice, I think, if we're not allowing, you know, if, like, even for me, I'm such a competitor. Like, if I was to create the best company in the world, right, I always say this, but if I was to say, look, I've made the best company in the world, I couldn't justifiably say that unless I had opened it up to everyone regardless, right? So, you know, I think for companies to say, oh yeah, we're the best in the world, and it's like, oh yeah, but you like bar these people and you give these people, you know, it's like, it's just not justifiable, you know? So I'm trying to just get the art form better. And I believe that it can be, and it's amazing as it is, but it can be even a million times better, you know? So,
and I think the more we listen to, you know, you, and not just be like, oh, wow, like Solomon's really going to change everything. Like, the more we take what you say to where we are and kind of run with it, like, the more white people make it their issue, the better we'll do as well, because we can't just...
You know, like, honestly as well, like, everyone can be racial prejudice. Like, you know, I can be racist to an Asian person, I can, you know, but the actual system of racism is, like, as it stands right now, it's a white issue. You know what I mean? Like, I feel the need to, you know, whether it, like, the system of white supremacy and how it's kind of moved into everyone, like, that's not, I think people look at it, I think, for a long time as if it's like a black issue. You know, I've said a lot as well. Like, it's actually not. I think we're like the victims of, you know, a situation, but it's a white issue. You know what I mean? Totally. It's like, it just is. And it's like, if I think it's all of us against racism, and, you know, and all of us against that kind of pervasive thing. But I think this idea that, you know, even in my own life in ballet companies, having to go out and do diversity and inclusion all the time, I think they would rather hear it from the director of that company, or they'd rather hear it from, like, mean more if me as a director went into communities and said, look, we have a place for you here, and this is the different way to accommodate you.
Because people can see through it. People can see through it when you're using someone as a prop.
Right. I'm the token black guy in this company, and, you know, come to the company.
I'm here to tell you that we can make it.
Yeah, we can make it, guys. I've never seen you on stage, so I'm not really cast that much. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, we need to just be a bit more kind of honest with those kind of things, you know? It's like, I just want to dance. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, we got 30 seconds left, so that was awesome. That was a perfect hour. And I just want to thank everybody for their questions and for watching. And, you know, let's check out House of Solomon, and please follow Solomon and pay attention.
Yeah, also, like, if you have any questions or anything, or want to, like, I'm always open for discussion. Like, that's just my whole thing. So,
great.
You know.
Good. We love that. It's great to see you, man, and talk with you. And
Thank you
thanks
so
for
much.
sharing so candidly.